Thanks for watching Morning Live. Now, on Friday, the Pretoria High Court ruled that soldiers and police officers who were at or near the Alexandra home of Collin Khosa, who was allegedly beaten so badly that it led to his death, be placed under suspension. Judge Hans Fabricius also gave the Ministers of Police and Defence 5 days to develop and publish a code of conduct for its members during this lockdown period, including circulating guidelines to the public on the circumstances under which force may be used and how to lodge complaints. Now, to date, the Military Ombudsman has confirmed receiving various complaints from members of the public regarding physical assault and abuse of power by members of the South African National Defence Force during the lockdown. The Military Ombud, retired Lieutenant General Vusumuzi Masondo, joins us on the line now. Thank you so much for your time this morning, General, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you, Sakina.
General, if we could perhaps just start by looking at your office, its mandate. Please explain to us, exactly what your office exists to do.
Okay, Sakina, the office was established in 2012, through an Act of Parliament, the Ombud Act 4 of 2012, as an independent and impartial institution to deal with complaints from members of the public about the official conduct of SANDF members, and also to deal with complaints from members and former members of the SANDF about their conditions of service.
So, looking at Friday's outcome and what Judge Hans Fabricius had to say, what is your immediate reaction to that as the Military Ombud?
Well, Sakina, the judgment was handed down on Friday, and as an office we have not had the opportunity really to study, to be able to really comment on it, and therefore, for now, I really wouldn't want to venture into commenting on the judgment.
And as per that judgment, we also know that an investigation still needs to be done, and the process still needs to unfold further in terms of what the judge has laid out. But how many cases has your office received during this lockdown period?
Sakina, my office has to date, since the commencement of the lockdown, received a total of 52 complaints. 30 of those complaints actually came from members of the public, where they were complaining about the violation of their human rights, excessive use of force, in some instances where they are alleging corruption by members of the SANDF. And of course, the complaints from members and former members of the SANDF really are complaints centered around issues of medical benefits, termination of service, issues of call-up from the reserve force members.
So, with regard to that, when you say your office has received 52 complaints, can we just talk through processes and procedure here? Because at the time when those complaints or cases reach your office, they would have already gone through other avenues, not so?
Well, I'm not sure whether they would have, but for instance, on the 26th, the office of March, the office issued a media statement where they advised members of the public how we could be reached during the period of the lockdown. This we're doing because as the office were also complying to the regulations of the lockdown, but we're actually currently working from home, and of course then we made provision for members of the public that they can also contact the office via WhatsApp. But perhaps I must mention that, the requirement in terms of our regulation is that people who lodge complaints with the office must do so in writing and in a prescribed form. So what generally happens when we receive these via WhatsApp messages, then we follow up and guide actually the complainants in terms of making sure, or send the complaint form, making sure that it's completed and sent back to us. And the complaint form essentially, provides us with the necessary information for us to commence with the investigation.
So, Lieutenant General, just going back to that process. So, I'm a member of the public, and I believe that I've been manhandled, harassed, or unduly, been forced to do or beaten by members of the SANDF. Who do I go to first? Who and what is my first port of call?
Yeah, as I indicated earlier on, it is the responsibility of the office to deal with complaints about the official conduct of the SANDF members. But also the other factor to take into account, it depends on the gravity, for instance, of the conduct. Because, in a case like where they murder somebody, that becomes a police case, really, But if we do receive the complaint ourselves, we'll still be able to investigate and maybe refer it to the police. But if it's minor infringements, the person's human rights, then we then deal with that fully and make a recommendation to the minister for an appropriate relief.
So in the case of Collin Khosa, did your office receive any complaint at any stage?
Well, in the case of Collin Khosa, we were contacted by a member of the Portfolio Committee on Defense, who actually sent us a video of the incidents of the Khosa, but from the family itself, we have not, as the officer, received the complaint. Now, in terms of the complaint we've received from Honorable Mare, member of the Portfolio Committee, we've been following up with him to try and get the necessary detail to be able to proceed with our investigation.
So just to get some clarity, since the time that you received that complaint from a member of parliament, has your office taken any sort of action? Did you determine to suspend any of the officers or anything else? Or are you still waiting for information?
Yeah, you see, because of the nature of the complaint, that is a video, from that we couldn't establish which soldiers were actually responsible for that. But what we have done in the interim is to also contact the Office of the Chief of the National Defence Force to indicate that we've received this complaint. We are in the process of investigating it. But if his office could actually assist us with information in terms of the soldiers who were deployed in Alexandra at the time. Unfortunately, he was not there to date to receive any response from him.
Why not, though? And is that not concerning with regard to the turning of the wheels of justice? Because we now have a court ruling calling for the suspension of these officers. Is that not something that your office could have determined, that they should be suspended while you investigate, or how does it work?
Yeah. You see, we are privy to the fact that the minister has actually also instructed the Chief of the National Defence Force to investigate this issue. And I think it's being done through a board of inquiry. So, from our side, while trying to get all the necessary information to proceed, we also have to respect what the Chief of the National Defence Force is doing with his own investigation.
But how does that impact on what you do and what your office has to do? Because surely you also have a mandate, and therefore, if the relevant information is brought before you, you need to make a determination based on that.
Yes, you're right, Fatima. You know, one of the difficulties that my office has been experiencing is the turnaround time in terms of the information that we require, not only from members of the party, but also from the office, you know. It really constrains the speed with which we can do our investigation.
So one would then have to ask the question, so what's the point then of having your office if indeed it doesn't have the requisite measures, the requisite resources in place to deal with these matters speedily? Because if a court of law is going to come to a more speedy determination, does that not then obviate the necessity for your office?
I don't think it necessarily does, because, you know, we need to understand that these, the current circumstances of the lockdown, you know, things are not happening in the normal way they should be happening. You know? So, therefore, because, outside the lockdown, we're able to make sure that we send our investigators to these areas to follow up on information that we require and all that. But in the circumstances of the lockdown, sometimes it is difficult to do that.
What makes it difficult? Why is it difficult?
Well, the difficulty arises around the fact that although some of my investigators, you know, have been given the authority to move around, you know, but that way of movement sometimes does not happen smoothly.
This is my difficulty. I'm trying to follow that train of thought because I don't understand why that is the case, especially given that we are in a lockdown situation. So it's not as if it's difficult to get from point A to B. In this instance, this was a very public case. There was a lot of information that was brought to the fore very publicly. And as you said, even to your own office, this member was brought to your attention by a member of parliament. So I find it difficult to understand exactly what the difficulty is.
You know, Sakina, in terms of our regulations, you know, if somebody lodges a complaint on behalf of another person, you know, first and foremost, he requires to submit to our office a power of attorney that empowers him to act on behalf of that office. And also then, as I indicated, to then complete the prescribed form, you know. And our regulations are very prescriptive in terms of that, you know, because if we don't receive facts, it's difficult to then continue full scale with our investigation.
So you said there were about 52 cases before you at the moment. Have any of those been resolved?
52,
Pardon?
It's 52 cases.
62.
52.
Yes, 52. That's what I'm saying. About 52 cases before you at the moment. Of those 52, how many of those have you managed to resolve, or how many of those are close to being resolved at this stage?
Well, so far, none of them has been completely resolved, except, you know, those that don't fall within our jurisdiction, you know. Like one of the complaints that we received was about police brutality, which we then referred to IT. But for those that we're dealing with, there are those where we've been actually provided with full information and therefore investigations are continuing.
So, are we likely to see any of these cases resolved before the lockdown is actually lifted? And when I say lifted, I'm looking at us potentially moving to level 3 at this point by the end of the month. And I say potentially. If we were to move to that level, for example, do you think any of your cases would have been resolved by that point, by the end of the month?
Well, Fatima, in the experience of our office and how we do things, I would say it would not, by the time the lockdown, maybe if it happens within a month or so, would not have completed the case. Because, you see, our process is you receive the complaint, we notify all the interested parties, and we allow them to also submit the information in terms of the complaint that we've received, and then we proceed and all that, and come to a stage where we come with a preliminary report, and it is sent to the Chief of the National Defence Force to respond, and then we finalize our report and make a recommendation to the minister. And of course, that process in itself takes time.
So just finally, if we can just give those details for the members of the public who want to lay complaints with your office, what avenues do they go through?
Yes, as I said, to make provision during the lockdown period that we can be provided by WhatsApp at 012-6776-3800 or by email at email address intake@milombud.org. And of course, we can also be contacted through social media platforms like Facebook, the South African Military Ombud, Twitter, at mail_ombud SA, LinkedIn, South African Military Ombud, Instagram, South African Military Ombud.
Well, thank you so much. Military Ombudsman, retired Lieutenant General Vusumuzi Masondo, responding to questions pertaining to the military's conduct during the COVID-19 period and the unfortunate case of the death of Collin Khosa.